This is Kathy from Gadgets Top 321, and earlier this week I ordered several ink samples from Vanness Pens, and they got them to me super quickly. I received them in the mail yesterday, and what I'm going to be doing today is taking a look at the 3 blue inks that were in this sample. Now, I've already done several writing samples with them, and I used my Fully Win 017 to do those writing samples, and I'm going to talk about why I chose this pen when I get to the writing samples. But you can tell from my dinner napkin chromatography here that I've got a dark, a medium, and a light blue. I'm going to do one of the writing samples live. I've done all the others already, but this last ink, I'm going to do the writing sample live. Now, this first darker ink is my first Callifolio ink. That's one of the reasons I ordered several ink samples, is I wanted to try some inks, some ink brands that I'd never tried before. This is my first Callifolio ink, Callifolio Equinox, and it's this darker ink. And my first writing sample I did on my favorite Rhodia ice pad, and you can see this is a nice saturated blue ink. It's got just a hint of green to it, but there's some nice shading. Now, the reason I chose my Fully Win 017 is because it's a nice wide medium nib. It puts down a nice amount of ink, but the reverse writing is also very good. It's smooth, it's very pleasant, it puts down a consistent line, and I wanted to be able to gauge with each one of these inks how the ink felt on paper, especially in a fine nib, since fine nibs are my go-to nib size. And this one felt great. So this ink is very reminiscent of Iroshizuku Tsukiyo, another one of my favorite inks. Now the medium blue is my first Akkermann ink. This is Akkermann Israel's Zeeblauw, or Israel's Zeeblauw, and that's a good name for this ink. The color looks very similar to the Callifolio Equinox, but it's less saturated, so it's a lighter blue, and I think Zeeblauw is a good name for that. It has nice shading, and it looks good in the medium nib and the fine nib. My only deal with this ink is in the fine nib, it didn't feel as good. There was more drag on the paper than there was with the Callifolio Equinox, and I just think it's because the Callifolio Equinox was more saturated. Now, I liked looking at Equinox, how it goes from a dark blue to an even darker blue. I really liked that. This sea blue, the shading didn't show up as much in the little scribble, but it looks really good in the writing. So I'm probably going to, I don't know. As I'm doing these writing samples, I'm trying to decide what pens these inks are going to look the best in. Okay, now this last one, this very light blue, which is not the type of ink that I normally gravitate towards, since I use fine nibs and I use my pens at work. This light blue is something I would have not normally been drawn to. And this comes from Ferris Wheel Press, and it's Blue Cotton Candy. And when the Ferris wheel inks first started coming out and people doing writing samples with them, they are very unsaturated inks, and I just wasn't drawn to them, like I said. But I was kind of interested in trying something like this. You can tell in my little ink drip here that it's periwinkle in the center, and there's a little halo of sky blue. And this ink has the property similar to like Sailor Ha Ha, which is really popular right now, and a lot of those inks that have that property that Inky Rocks describes as chroma shading, where it shades a different color than the main ink. I, I was kind of curious. I didn't want to try a whole bottle of something like that, but I was just curious. So, what I'm this is the one I'm going to do the writing sample of. Now, here's how I did these. I just dipped, and this one's already been dipped, and I've done a few writing samples, but I'm going to dip it again because just to make sure I've got enough ink here. And if you look at this ink sample, it looks like a decently dark blue. Now I knew what I was getting into with this, but on the writing sample from Vanness, it did look a little more saturated than this, so I'm going to be trying this in several pens, but I'll let you see what it looks like in this one. Let's see, I'm going to be putting this in putting holes in it and putting it in my domino. Let's see, and this is true. This is what it looks like. When I wrote with it the first time, I thought this looks like water that you washed out a watercolor brush in. Now, if I would have been new to the fountain pen hobby and gotten this ink to go with a new fountain pen, I would have been pretty disappointed in it. But I have some ideas for this. This is like writing with water. Let me do hold on. I need to do the reverse writing. And to describe the feeling, it feels like there is no ink at all in the pen. So that's what it looks like. Now I'm going to show you some writing samples on other papers. Okay, let's see. On Tomoe River paper, white, that like you see in a Hobonichi Techo, this is what the three inks looked like. And you can see how pale that blue cotton candy is. I didn't even write with it reverse writing because it's probably not something you're going to do. It's going to need to be in a very wet nib. Well, and I do have some fine nibs that are decently wet. I don't know. I'm just going to have to do some experimenting. And here's the Hobonichi Weeks that has kind of an off-white, creamy colored paper. That sea blue is real. Akkermann sea blue looks really good on this paper. That shading looks good. Here's, let's see, this is my little Marlman Puan notebook, and this is very slick paper, and that's what it looks like there. You can see the fine nib. It really came out looking, this is the same reverse writing, it looks more fine with the Zeeblauw. And let's see, this is my Leuchtturm. This was an interesting writing experience on the Leuchtturm, which not quite as slick as the other papers I've just shown. It was a more pleasant experience, and I can see this being used in journaling, not necessarily for writing, but just little embellishments on the page, decorations on the page, and I like it on the Leuchtturm. The other two, you know, fantastic blue inks. I like both of those. Let's see, and I was going to compare these to a few inks that or two inks that I have in my collection already. Okay, so here's the Callifolio Equinox, and Israel's Zeeblauw, the Ferris wheel press. Looks like when I set it down here, looks like I forgot to write anything on the page. And Colorverse Pale Blue Dot is a little more green, but it's similar, and it's, yeah, that's showing up pretty accurately. It's similar to Israel's Zeeblauw, but there's just a little more green in it. Those two inks are similar. They've got a little more brightness to them. And I said Iroshizuku Tsukiyo was similar to Callifolio Equinox. And let me show these two. The Tsukiyo has just a hair more blue to it. These two are very similar, but this one has just a little more blue to it. This one has just a hint more green, but both very similar in saturation. I will say the Tsukiyo is looking like on this paper, which is not super fountain pen friendly. It's nice and thick, so it doesn't bleed through. But this one, the Tsukiyo, is looking like it's wanting to come through a little bit more. And it's just got a little bit of feathering to it. But these are my blue inks that I've been playing with for the last little bit. And I've got a few more colors. I'm going to do videos like this, do them by color group. Oh, and the Callifolio Equinox, I think I'm going to use in my Sailor 1911. I really liked Tsukiyo in it, and with this nib having that characteristic Sailor feedback to it, a nice saturated ink to kind of make the writing experience a little more smooth. I like that. For Israel's Zeeblauw, I'm going to use my Pilot Prera with a stub nib in it. It's got sometimes it's called the cursive medium. And let's see. I think that's just going to look great in this pen. I'm curious to see, though, I'm a little concerned. This pen writes just a hair dry. I want to see if that shading is going to show up. I don't want it to just look like a flat magic marker, but I'm curious to see how that turns out. And for this Ferris wheel press, this super pale blue, I'm going to use a pen that has worked well with other unsaturated inks that I've had trouble with in other pens, like Iroshizuku Yuyaki and Chiku Ren. They performed well in my Kaweco Perkeo with a medium nib. So I'm going to give this a shot. I'm not going to use it for writing per se, but I'm going to use it for decorating in my journal. I'm going to see how that works out. All right. If you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.